Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's a pleasure to be here today. As a global security company with 140,000 people and 71,000 engineers, when you ask people about research investments, you can imagine that you get at least 71,000 answers. And so what we have developed over the last couple of years is a set of focusing mechanisms called the strategic technology threads. Those threads are shown here, and they have been broadly vetted. They have been shaped by global socioeconomic and technology issues, broadly vetted with our customer base and, of course, inside the corporation. Having said that, we like to think of these as being written in chalk, not chiseled in stone. In fact, as I go through a few of them, you'll find that there is one addition in the last year and a change to one that was made as well. We treat these as programs. So when we select an area of investment, we manage that like a program, put a program manager in front of it, and we have deliverables that result from that program execution. We also don't uniformly invest in them. We pick a few at a time, do pretty heavy investments in those few, run them like a program, approximately 36 months in length, and at the end of that period, then pick others. So what I'm going to do is tell you about the first three that we selected. These have been in place for about 3 years. The first three are shown here. They're nearing the end of their activities. I'll describe each one in some detail. The first is advanced active and passive sensing. We're going to focus on laser radar there, nanotechnology, and then advanced and complex software. Two of these areas are clearly technology initiatives, kind of spanning both ends of the technology readiness level scale, if you think about it that way. Whereas nanotechnology you can think of as an early stage technology, laser radar, more on the systems side. And then the third area, systems and software, is really about executing flawlessly in a complex software domain. So let's talk about these in some detail. The laser radar initiative was motivated by really a change in mission space. And if you think about really the move that has been made from nation states to individuals, you can think about the intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance systems that were used to monitor, for example, troop movements in the Soviet Union, order of battle calculations in Europe, and really now what we're needing to do in addition to those things is have individuals be identified. And to do that, laser radar is a good tool. Laser radar offers the advantage of being an active system, so therefore signal to noise, signal to clutter, better managed. It also offers high spatial resolution so that you can identify high spatial structures like individuals. The two areas of research that we have invested in most heavily have been in human identification and in chem biodetection. Next area of investment is nanotechnology. Of course, we heard from previous speakers how important the nanotechnology research is. It tends to be very interdisciplinary, and same goes for us. We're applying it in many interdisciplinary ways. In fact, I would say much of our research in the corporation now is interdisciplinary. Roughly $1 billion annually is invested in nanotechnology in the United States, roughly another $1 billion around the world. So when you think about making an investment, really what we're trying to do is pull forward and take advantage of some of that research that's been taking place globally for a number of years and insert it into our products faster than would normally be done. This program has been extremely successful. We're in our third year. We've actually developed a manufacturing process, a safe manufacturing process for embedding carbon nanotubes in a variety of different kinds of materials to include glass fiber. And they are highly integrated into the fiber, and it therefore leads to high strength to weight materials that are also manufacturable in a very safe way. Systems and Software Initiative is what we call this program. And if you thought about the functionality of systems, and you did a simple kind of pie chart analysis, and what we're finding is that the part of the functionality that is software derived rather than hardware derived, if you did that kind of simple distribution, is large and increasing. The complexity of the software is also getting Very great. What we're finding is that the training, the processes, the tools and technology, in fact, just aren't as scalable as people would like to make them. We tended to use the same processes that were used for more simple systems, and as the complexity increased, we begin to see failures. So this initiative, which again has been in place for about 3 years, worked on those 3 areas, such as systems architects. Real systems architects that understand, that's another point I'll make, I guess, is that, there's no shortage of algorithm coders. There are very smart people who can code almost any algorithm. The failures that we see are not in the algorithms. The failures that we see are made much earlier in the architecture. And so systems architecture is very important, getting it right up front, making those decisions up front, and then having, as I said, the processes, the tools that enable you to execute flawlessly. The next 3 areas I'm going to call the innovation pathfinders. And as I walk through these, as probably all of you in the audience know, that each one of these areas is a very important area of technology investment. We've also used these areas, as the name implies, to better understand innovation. I'm going to spend some time later in the talk talking about innovation, and in fact some of the recent changes that we've made to the way we're thinking about innovation, and actually different areas of focus for our innovation. These areas were chosen because by nature they tend to be interdisciplinary. So let's walk through them. Autonomous systems. Leveraging autonomy for robotic platforms and systems. Airborne autonomous systems, as we see in UAVs, offer several advantages. I think the principal advantage is persistence. You don't have human-limited performance, so therefore you can think about persistent systems that can last much longer than if you had a person in the platform. On the ground, you can think about taking on missions that involve the dull, the dirty, and the dangerous, not putting humans in harm's way. And as we look to the future, what we see is 40 years of manned and unmanned systems working together. It's highly unlikely that we're going to see a sudden shift where all of a sudden autonomous unmanned systems are every place and the manned platforms are not. However, we also recognize that as the capability of autonomous systems continues to increase, that they will take on more and more complex missions. So what are some of the problems? Some of the problems are that most autonomous systems are teleoperated. They're unoccupied. However, there's a person, usually kind of one-to-one correspondence, if you will, linked to that platform, teleoperating the platform. Also, the logistics support required for an unmanned system is typically equal to or greater than the support required for a manned system performing a similar mission. So we think autonomy, and real autonomy, where you're able to have a human set the strategy, monitor performance, and be called in for anomalies is the way to go. And we also think there's a tremendous synergy between a manned platform, think of an airborne platform, for example, and a set of wingmen that might be unmanned that are working together to execute very complex missions. And on the ground, you can think of that same scenario. The next area is human terrain. Human terrain is a bit of an overloaded term. Let me tell you what I mean by human terrain. When you think of human terrain, think of not geographic terrain. Think of not being formed, not your thinking, not being formed around just where you live, but more broadly around ideologies. And what's enabled that is essentially global instantaneous communication in the form of computer and telephone. So when most of us in the room grew up in a city, in a neighborhood, in a town, and our friends, where we went to school, where we went to work, kind of formed our thinking, and we worked within that group. We might have had other interests. You might, in fact, get in in an automobile or take a vacation and go someplace else. Generally speaking, that was short-lived. You came back home after vacation's over and you're back in that environment. You might even pick up a phone call, make a long-distance call, as they were called. They were generally expensive, and probably you got in trouble because you talked too long in a long-distance phone call. Well, of course, things have changed. Instantaneous internet communication and telephone. You pick up the phone and call somebody, you have no idea where that person is. Maybe the ringtone's a little bit different. You have no idea where that person is. And so this instantaneous communication, which I'm sure people will be studying and its impact on humanity for a number of decades, has really enabled people to organize around ideologies. One of the manifestations of that is global terrorism. There are also other manifestations of it, such as social networking. When you think about, up until about 20 years ago, just celebrated our anniversary of the Berlin Wall last week, when you think about it, this bipolar world that we lived in with the United States and our allies in the Soviet Union and the Soviets' allies, we really understood the situation. We modeled the situation. About 90% of our resources were spent on understanding the Soviet Union. And we did that very well. You think about the slow-moving nature of the problem, the nation state that it was, the command and control system. We understood that very well. We modeled it very well. Life was pretty good. That's not so today. It's a very complex world. When you think about people organizing around ideology, and you've heard the term hearts and minds, how do you think about understanding the hearts and minds, the motivation? And by the way, once you understood the Soviet Union and you modeled their command and control structure, their behavior, etc., then you begin to think about how deterrence would actually play a role. It's very difficult to think about how deterrence plays a role when it comes to terrorism. What do you hold at bay? You don't have necessarily a nation state to hold at bay. Who's responsible? How do you threaten? So this initiative is designed to bring in behavioral models and try to understand the ideology, the organizational structure, what's motivating people, what are their interests, what are their hearts and minds about. The next area is systems biology, applying engineering discipline to the biosciences for national security. So great talks this morning. We all understand and see the huge advances that are being made in biology. And as the last speaker indicated, many of those advances are moving away from diagnostic and therapeutic medicine based on small molecule chemistry to genomics and proteomics. Well, what's the advantage there? The advantage there is we're moving away from biological evolutionary advancements to information technology-based advancements, which we know has shown in the last 10 or 15 years progress on a geometric scale. And so we can take advantage of those huge information technology-based advances in biology and apply them to national security purposes, principally by adding engineering. And let me take this moment to mention one thing. When I call these the innovation pathfinders, I think it's important that I describe innovation as we see it versus invention. And it also kind of speaks to the relationship that we have with MIT and other universities. We think of invention as the creation of the idea, and we think of innovation as the application of the idea to products and services. And as a large aerospace and defense prime, our 71,000 engineers and scientists wake up every morning typically thinking about their product and service, typically focusing on innovation more than invention. It's not to say they're not creative people, it's just to say that they're motivated to think about innovation, that is, the application of ideas. So therefore, where do you go for ideas? Well, universities are a great place for that. So we have a major research initiative with universities to kind of act as a perfect marriage, if you will, between that invention and that innovation. And I think systems biology, human terrain, and autonomous systems are three exact areas that help us understand how invention can move to innovation.